What's going on, everybody? You're now watching the TNF podcast. Like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. Um, we got some upcoming shows for you all. On of the 18th of August here, excuse me, we're going to have Matt Simmons from 6 Feet Deep, Cleveland hardcore band. We actually pre-recorded that episode, so we're just going to release it on that day. It's an in-studio podcast. And we got Richie Mancuso from Wisdom and Chains. He's supposed to be coming up on the show here soon. We're still setting a tentative date for that. Also, Andrew Neufeld from Comeback Kid Figure 4 and Aaron Dahlbeck from Converge, Bane, Be Well, all sorts of groups. That's going to be also to be announced, so stay tuned for that. I have a merchandising company called Hell's Heart Merch Co. It's hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code 20 for 20% off your entire order. I'll throw some samples up at the end, but if in the interim, while you're listening, you can check it out. And yeah, I'm more than happy to print out a good quality T-shirt. That's something I really enjoy. So check it out. All right. So my next guest on the show today, he's been in so many prolific hardcore bands, and I looked at the list of them, and I was like, wow, this is a crazy amount of like amazing bands that this guy has been a part of. Shelter, 454 Big Block. I just learned today Baby GOPAL, which is pretty cool because I'm a practitioner of the Hare Krishna faith. And did studio engineering for so many bands. Currently the drummer in American Nightmare, and he runs the Mystic Valley Studios up in Massachusetts. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Garcia-Rivera. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thanks for
I
having me
did all
on
my
here.
carnival barking.
Yeah, right. Great.
So, the first question, and we've got quite a few questions from somebody sent me an email, so I'll try to get to a few of those. We're taking questions in the chat today, so feel free, and also super chats if you'd like to donate. But the first question I like to ask, and Alex, he has a really extensive career and a lot of recordings that he's worked on. I listened to one of your other podcasts, and it was talking about how Van Halen, you were really kind of like, that really kind of got you hooked into playing music. And, I guess my question would be, what about Van Halen? Aside from, the drumming, obviously, like Too Hot for Teacher, that's an amazing song. What about Van Halen really kind of drew you in?
Well, all right. I was like a 10-year-old, and as a 10-year-old, um, watching like any of those Van Halen videos, it just looked like being in a band was like the most fun thing you could do. And definitely connected with the music. Um, I hadn't really heard much like punk and stuff yet or metal or anything, which like just a couple years later I would like really get into. But yeah, it just seemed like fucking fun, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's like, I mean, they're probably the biggest band in the world at that time. And just the whole like vibe fit me. And as well as it did with like many 10-year-olds, I'm sure.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's like, but I honestly, I played air drums for like 3 years before I even got my first drum set. I just knew I wanted to be in a band and do something, but like, I don't know. I had like a guitar around the house that my uncle left there, and like I could never figure it out. But I also didn't have a tuner. I didn't know like how to tune it or anything. And
Sure.
I was like, I'll never figure this out. But like drums, it's like you see somebody hit a thing and you're like, that's the snare drum, that's a cymbal. It's so just like, you know, it, it is what it is. So it's easy to
Right.
figure out. And I connected with that, gravitated towards the drums. I'm not even really sure why, because like Alex Van Halen and whatever drummers, like they weren't always like the most exciting ones to watch in whatever band it might have been. Like, usually it's a singer, or in that case, like, it doesn't get better than Ed Van Halen.
Yeah.
Um, but there's like an amount of like kind of cheesiness to a lot of that stuff. Like, I could have got into like Kiss or something, but like I had I been born a few years before, It's like
Right.
maybe Kiss would have been my thing, but like
That
Peter
that's a
Criss was never the great drummer, you know?
Yeah, that's a really common denominator of a lot of people that have been on this show that have, been in hardcore metal. They say like Kiss was like, really just really kind of sucked them into like metal and then eventually was like a gateway to hardcore and punk and all that.
Yeah. My gateway to hardcore and punk was playing it, I think. And like I mean, I remember early on with my first band, we were playing like Who covers and stuff. And like before you discover punk, if you've seen the Who like smashing guitars and shit, like that's pretty punk. And
Yeah.
we like that. But then like I don't know, it's like some of the older kids in the neighborhood were listening to Black Sabbath and then like Black Flag, and we got into skating like as 12, 13-year olds, and that all kind of happened all together. And so we were playing this punk, like skate punk music, I guess. And we had like a sort of like a scene in this like little town, Holliston, Massachusetts. It's like sort of in the woods, but like
Right.
we had a whole like punk scene in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, nothing huge, but like if you got all of us hanging out at a skate ramp, there might have been like 30 kids there, which
Yeah,
was uncommon.
you were talking about the band Kingpin. That was kind of your first hardcore endeavor.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were pretty much the same members, but we went by the name Funny Wagon before that, and just like
Okay.
silly lyrics and stuff. But like, it's still listenable to this day, and I stand behind that. And we're actually working on releasing some kind of discography. Um, we were all kind of inspired by the recent Eye for an Eye reunion. Eye for an Eye being one of the Boston hardcore bands, like just fucking legends from the late 80s, early 90s. And Kingpin used to play shows with them. And so when they were getting back to play some shows, they asked us if we would get back together to do a show with them.
Oh wow.
And we were I mean, we're all still friends. And just, I'm maybe the only one still in the hardcore scene. Um, they're all just like, elder punks at this point. But
Right.
as far as the music and going to shows, like it's just me. So I hit up the group text and was like, hey guys, like Eye for an Eye is doing the show. Like, would you want to play? And everyone was on board except our guitarist couldn't really commit to it for now. But like it really got us all kind of talking about it again and thinking about it. And then I'm digging up like all the old recordings and trying to get them ready for a remaster. And I mean, that's actually pretty exciting for me and for us right now. But it's like, that's like living in the past. Like we were teenagers. But
Sure.
I will tell you this though, going to the Eye for an Eye reunion shows, it was like what I imagined going to a high school reunion was like, but of the hardcore scene from 1990. And like some of these people I hadn't seen in 30 years. There's one woman that like sat down at her table and was like talking to us and stuff. And I was like, oh, who's this like, outgoing person? And then like later on, I found out I totally knew them from before, but they were unrecognizable, as am I. It's like I had like short hair and was like, this young, like skinny drummer dude. And
Sure.
I mean, I got long hair. I had a mustache like at the show. Like, it's like I was in disguise basically.
Right.
but
And
you know, oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I was
well,
just
I
gonna
was
say
just gonna
more
say,
more of that what I want.
yeah, you were, saying that, you had a real kind of concentrated and like tight, like, tight knit hardcore scene. And that, that's kind of how your bands like Nirvana in like the Pacific Northwest would like take off. There would be like these just little like microcosms of, music scenes. And, with Kingpin, I don't really know a lot about the lineup of that or, as far as like, whatever personnel would have been in your town at the time. But did anybody move on to do anything else after that? Is there like hardcore alumni?
Not. I mean, not really. Our guitarist played in this band Missile Thrush, which was not a hardcore band at all. But I think many of us were looking to play other kinds of music. My next band was Shelter. So I stayed in the hardcore scene. Yeah, the other guys kind of fell off, but our kind of greater like friend group, and like kids we would skate with and stuff. I mean, some of those guys went on to like some like metal bands and stuff, like Shadows Fall and
Oh,
stuff like
okay.
that. There's one other one.
Nice.
And so it's been cool kind of seeing our friend group grow and stay in the scene. And that has been pretty cool. And then I don't know, sort of the generation under me, generation of hardcore being like 2 to 3 years younger. And there's like a
Right.
turnaround of like 2 or 3 years of new faces coming, old faces going, it seems, with a few just like rocks that have stayed there.
Yeah.
Like Al Quint, for instance, dude's legendary. He put out the Kingpin 7-inch back then. And I mean, he is still very active in the scene, takes a lot of photos and stuff.
Nice.
There's a handful of people like that around. But I don't know, just tying back into that Eye for an Eye reunion show.
Yeah.
It was great seeing all those old faces and seeing what people have been up to. One thing about the hardcore scene is like not a lot of people just took like the safe, normal, regular route in life. So some people that have done some interesting things with their lives, and it's
Well,
cool
and
to catch
to
people like that.
kind of tie it back to Van Halen too, there's a quote that David Lee Roth made when he was walking through his old neighborhood. He kind of had like a high school reunion of sorts too. Saw some people that he went to school with, and they're like, "Oh, must be awesome being David Lee Roth, front man for Van Halen." And he said, "You know what? You took that office job. You took the sure thing, the steady paycheck." He goes, "I chose to sail the seas of consequence." And I was like, wow, that's just like it's a really poignant thing to be able to say. And when you hear about David Lee Roth's life, apparently I don't know if this was in the interim of when he was after he'd left Van Halen and then started doing reunions with him later, but apparently he served as an EMT. Did you ever hear that?
Oh, I heard about that. I mean, I've sort of like kept up with what he's been up to just because I find him fascinating. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a while like when the Howard Stern show went off the air at our local station, at least he like picked up that time slot and was just like it was just him just spouting like gibberish and like he like interviewed his uncle and like whoever, and a lot of that was him talking about being an EMT.
Oh,
And
really?
I'm guessing that I'm guessing that was after he left Van Halen and even probably after doing his like solo band and stuff. I mean, if I was a true fan, I would probably know exactly when that was in the timeline.
Right, right.
But yeah, I mean, the thing that you quoted him saying, it's so true. Like, there's no sure thing. There's no safety. Like talking to somebody successful that took that chance and has been successful, or you look at them and you're like, oh yeah, of course they like never had to work or like whatever, like they're successful, and like you see like that path and it seems pretty like linear and safe. Um but it's fucking not. And like
Yeah.
um there's so many like safety nets that like for some people aren't there, for me weren't there. If you grow up from a family with means and money or whatever, um it is easy for you to take a chance and maybe become an artist or open a business or whatever. Because if you fail, it doesn't matter. You
Right.
parents bail you out, you try again or whatever. It's like it's easy to be punk and look weird if you don't have to fucking care about
Right.
how you're gonna eat and shit like that. But for me and a handful of like real dudes, and maybe there's more than a handful. There's kind of a lot. It's like you only ever hear of the success stories, though. You don't hear about the people that like crashed and burned. And I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, there's actually a lot of musicians that I've known that are excellent musicians. And I've watched them playing band after band after band for like decades. And eventually it becomes unsustainable to try to do a band on the level you want it to, with like the touring and putting out records and stuff. And then, you get the 9 to 5 job, and, maybe you get a family or some stability somehow. And it's like you see these people's like kind of dreams go away, and then the
Right.
real life enter. Um, and I've been kind of riding that line, because like I've been successful in a sense that I've done pretty much exactly what I've wanted to with my life. But like as far as like financial stuff and stability, like I've never had that, until like, I mean, I'm long married now, and my wife has like a steady job. Like we have a house, like I've got 2 kids. There are many elements that are very stable, very kind of like normal, if you want to even call it that. But then I'm still very much busy with music, with the studio, um, and playing in bands. And I don't tour like I used to. Sort of by choice. I chose to hang out with my kids and raise my kids, because it's fun and I love it. And why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
But I, I will probably be much busier with music as they're older. Probably that's going to be like with the studio, but it could be with like full-time touring again. Like, I don't know. But anyways, like been riding the line of like, playing in successful bands, and then coming home and like maybe working a job, or now for, let's see, I think 2011 is when I stopped doing any other jobs, aside from music. And that's when I started doing the studio full time. And so now it's like my whole life is music. And it's very risky. It's very weird. Like a slow month
Yeah.
for me is like, I'm like, oh man, like I got nothing going on. But
Right.
it's cool to have the studio where, if playing live or creating my own music gets slow, the studio is busy, or sometimes the studio is busy and I'm just waiting for a break to do the other stuff. Um, but I've been very, very fortunate to play in bands that people care about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
wild.
you you had mentioned in some previous shows before that your first band was after Kingpin was Shelter when you were like 19 years old. How did you get linked up with those guys? And I know Kendra was the drummer before that.
Yep,
And
love that dude.
he's a great dude. Yeah, he's really awesome. Yeah, how did you get in touch with
Do
those
you have his
guys? Or did they
Christmas album?
what is it? Yama Niyama Das Brahmachari. Yeah, something. I had it at one point. I'll have to look for it. It's in there somewhere. Did you play on that album with him?
Yeah, it's hilarious. A lot of like,
Yeah.
yeah. No, oh no, 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 no. I did not. I
No.
would have though, but it's not that kind of album.
Yeah, yeah. I think he did
But
everything on it, didn't he?
Shelter, how did I get hooked up with Shelter? I think he did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, which is pretty much all of you, Kendra was the original Shelter driver. Well, not original, but like one of the early like
He was one of
main
the
Shelter
first,
guys.
yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, just full on Krishna devotee, and made like a pretty funny, like satirical Krishna humor Christmas album. And
Yeah,
one of my,
he's done a few, yeah.
I already know, we just done a few. Um,
He's got a Christmas themed album, and then he has a few others that are just like he does parodies. It's almost like Weird Al type thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's great. But yeah, his leaving the band kind of opened up a slot there for me. Kingpin used to play with Shelter quite a bit, and I mean, we were friends. And one of our sort of like hardcore friends that were more our age, like Ray and Purcell. They're about like 5 or 6 years older than me. Um, and our friend Norman Arenas played guitar for them at the time. He was a huge Kingpin fan, I remember, and all the guys in the band. I remember Ray at a Kingpin show once said, like, we got to figure out a way for you to get involved in Shelter, just for the hang, I think, And when Kendra left, I think it was Norman that called me, and he called me at this like farm that I used to work at. I remember picking up the phone and talking to him, and he was like, "Hey, I kind of quit Shelter. Do you want to join Shelter?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." Kingpin had just broken up, and yeah, it was a very pivotal moment in my life. Just like leaving the farm, and like, I was going to go to college. Glad I didn't, and ended up just going on tour and never looking back. And I mean, Shelter was already like a pretty big band for the hardcore scene, and I think the first tour was over in Europe. I was like, wow, like I get to go to foreign countries and play music over there. It was Shelter. Like, it's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just went and never looked back, really. That was the beginning of it all, in a way.
Did you have any interest in the actual philosophy itself, or was it just, you
Are you
were
cutting out
helping
here?
friends?
Did you hear
What's
any
that?
of that?
Yeah, I did.
Did you
There's a
hear
bit of a
any of that?
lag.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Okay.
a bit of a lag. What I was gonna say was, did you have any like interest in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness at all while you were touring with Shelter? Did they ever like take you to temples or try to preach Krishna consciousness to you?
Uh, we- I think they were like trying to convert me or whatever.
Mhm.
I've been interested about it and curious about it. Um, a lot of things aligned with the sort of vegan and straight edge philosophy. And mostly I was curious, I would say. And I stayed in like all these like cool temples all around the world, met all these like spiritual masters and things like that. And I did some meditating and everything. And I really did sort of fully immerse myself in it because I wanted to learn about it. Um, but like ultimately, like if you can have like spirituality without religion, maybe that's what I am. Or I mean, that's how I came out the other side, anyways.
Sure.
Um, um, but yeah, I never like became like a Hare Krishna devotee. Um, but a handful of my friends still are, and it's great for them. And I mean, even just like if we want to limit our talking about just Ray and Purcell, like those guys, there have been years where we've seen each other a lot, and years have gone by where we don't see each other at all. But they're like family to me. They're like my like older brothers. And I feel that way about almost every band that I played in, where the band members have become like family to me, and that's one of my favorite things about playing music.
Yeah, I mean, like that. I still have the same kind of relationship with, a lot of my ex bandmates, and yeah, Ray and Purcell definitely went pretty hard on the preaching and the living in the monasteries and whatnot. And it's interesting because I was listening to your other show, and you were saying how you were on Mantra, you helped write some of the music, and that you actually wrote a bunch of the songs from Mantra on in your living situation, your living abode. And then you guys ended up going to Ray's place and writing some more songs for Mantra. And then you mentioned that you had decided to not uh, be a part of the band anymore. And I found that to be really interesting. What was the situation with that?
But first of all, it's not like I was writing any of the songs. I was the drummer in the band, and we were creating the songs together. And I remember just schedule wise, it worked out where they stayed with me. I had this like shitty like first apartment of mine with this girlfriend at the time, and it was in Framingham, Massachusetts. The band came lived with us, and I was still young. My drums, like my practice space was my mom's basement. So like we would drive from Framingham to my mom's basement and write songs all day. And like she'd come home from work and, you know, we'd stop and then just like hang out in the driveway, talk to her for a moment, and then repeat. We did that for about 2 weeks. And then the other 2 weeks, we stayed at Mom Capo's house in Danbury, Connecticut. And that was fucking wild just because like she didn't give a fuck. She's like, she's still alive as far as I know. And
Mm.
she was like grandma age then and just had all these like Hare Krishna punks living in her house. Like it's no big deal. And I don't know. That's when Baby Gopal sort of got created during those sessions there. Graham Land, he was in England at the time. He flew back to do the band, and we started writing songs for that as well. And we would kind of go in shifts. So whoever was like off shift would cook these like elaborate dinners, and at the end of the day, we would have this like big like dinner party, and it was so fucking awesome. I've just had like such fond memories of that time there, and I remember Mom Capo put me to work. I I remember scraping wallpaper in her bathroom. I think I just like scraped it all down and got it ready. I don't remember actually like putting up new wallpaper or anything, but it is such a me thing to be doing because I like having projects and like creating things. Even if it's just building something or like helping someone redo their bathroom or whatever.
Sure.
I remember they put me in charge of like van maintenance. We had this like giant Dodge Ram van, and I remember like putting like Bondo on it and sanding down like the holes in it and stuff. um, but yeah, I like having those kind of roles. I think, or I gravitate to them in the band scenario and in life, I guess too. But yeah, that whole mantra writing session was pretty cool, and like I was a part of going to like the dinners and stuff with record labels, and it was in that transition when Shelter was like trying to get signed to some other kind of label and take it to the next level. Um, and yeah, we did some more touring, and then I quit the band, and I remember just feeling like there's so much in my life that was about to fall apart or something. And I just needed to let it fall apart, or more like to like shed my old skin to become who I was supposed to become. Part of that was like, um, you know, telling my mother I wasn't going to go to college and, you know, go that way in life, that I was going to do music. And no parent wants to hear that. And then breaking up with the girlfriend, leaving that apartment, getting a place in the city with my friends. I think at that time I started playing in 454 Big Block, which was my like local Boston band. Um, and Shelter, I think, had moved up from Philly. They were living at the Temple in New York, and it was like, oh, do I move to New York and like be the Shelter guy, or do I kind of like carve my own path a little more? And yeah, there's just enough like vagueness going on where I felt I shouldn't stay in shelter. And then I ended up kind of going back and forth because being friends still, like they would call on me for tours whenever like a tour would come up. And I remember like I think Dave DiCenzo did the Mantra album. Mackie did some touring with them, and then like I don't know, I think they were bummed out, and I'm sure there was more to it than that. There had to have been, but then yeah, they asked me to play after that, so I was kind of back and forth probably till I think 2000 was my last tour for them. We did the 120 Summers Pass tour, and then Purcell quit, and I sort of quit with him. And yeah, I remember Purcell and I had these couple of side projects. One was like a metalish one called Never Surrender, and then there's another one called Last of the Famous. It was more like pop core. And I don't know, I was a part of those for a little bit, but it was just like not too hard to keep it going for me, but it just seemed like it didn't make sense because I wasn't gonna like move anywhere else for these bands. And certainly there are different times where there were bands that I would have moved for, um, or did even, you know, but that didn't really line up for that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I spent a lot of time with those guys. Love them.
Um, did you play? No, I mean they're great. I mean, definitely. You know, as far as getting me kind of exposed to the Krishna conscious philosophy, pretty instrumental. 108 as well, Cro-Mags. Um, you uh, I have to ask you this question because there was a project years ago, and I feel like you may have been a part of it, but it didn't show up. When I was looking you up, Bars, the group introducing. Were you a part of that project?
Very briefly. I think
Okay.
the album was already done, and they needed a drummer. I think I played like 2 shows with them, if I
Okay.
remember correctly. It was a while ago. I think 2 shows. Um, but like we practiced um, a bunch of times, and from that actually, um, Adam Wentworth and Matt Woods were in Bars, and then I remember those 2 got to band practice early, and one of them started playing a Deep Purple riff, like Space Truckin' or something. And like, I don't know any other like hardcore kids that like Deep Purple, but then even among like musicians that like that classic rock stuff, like not a lot of people actually like talk about Deep Purple. But I love
No.
Deep Purple, and I was like, oh, cool, man. And I started jamming along, and like we ripped through it like note for note, I think. And at the end, we were like, holy shit, like you like Deep Purple? I like Deep Purple. Like, let's do another band based on like our love for Deep Purple.
Deep Purple.
And that became the band Blood Horse. And yeah. But
And
yeah,
yeah,
Blood
the
Horse,
reason I
we
asked that was
actually have
because
new music coming out.
The reason I asked that was because I actually purchased one of y'all's records, and I remember one of the band members saying that they were in Blood Horse, and they're like, I got a bunch of, I got the actual record. It was an orange vinyl, and then I got somebody sent me a bunch of live songs on like a CD or something like that. I was like, that was cool. And then I think somebody was like, yeah, check out Blood Horse, and I did, and it's exactly as you describe it, And so you have new music out for them.
Coming out actually.
Okay.
It's been, I mean, we broke up like not like because we hated it or hated each other or anything. It was like our guitarist moved to not having
Mhm.
that anymore kind of like slowed things up. And then they started doing All Pigs Must Die, and I started playing in Cold Cave. So that must have been around 2010 or 11 or something when we stopped playing. But we had all this awesome music that we didn't record yet. And so every couple of years we would text about it, like, hey, so we got some new music coming out, just unfinished stuff. We've like jammed a few times, and it's been kind of awesome playing music together again. But it's some of the best music that I've been a part of, and it's going to be cool to have it out. We talked a little bit with Iodine about putting it out, and as far as I know, we're still going that route. But yeah, that's like songs that were written like over a decade ago, and they're finally
Oh,
coming
wow.
out.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Awesome.
like,
That's gonna be
yeah,
awesome.
I'll play some shows once that comes out, so that would be awesome.
Be cool to come down to, I'm in near Charlotte. There's a lot of really good venues around here. Now you are still, also jamming with American Nightmare, which, I knew, to kinda rewind a little bit, you guys had the name controversy like years ago, with the other like the Misfits cover band, and then there was the name change to Give Up the Ghost. And then, I noticed, and when you guys came back with your new album, which you also engineered, which we'll get into that too. You guys had the name American Nightmare again. What I don't think I ever heard what the resolution with that was.
Well, a lot of that I haven't been the one dealing with it. Wes is like, the master of that stuff. And really we were just like, fuck it, like we'll just use the name again. Who cares? Like they can't still be a band or care, But then Wes actually looked into it a bit, and that band never actually followed through with the copywriting of it. So it was up for grabs, and like so we kind of got it back again. Um, so I don't know. That name is just fucking cursed. It's like even the whole band might be cursed. I don't know.
Well, and I remember hearing about it, and I was just like, I just thought it was such a petty thing for them to kind of do. It's like, because bands have existed with same names like simultaneously, and it's like, I don't know. I thought
Yeah.
I was like, American Nightmare. It's such a good name, and then I remember hearing the big stink about it. But you guys came back with that new album, and by the way, like, background music is still one that I listen to regularly. That album hits so hard for me. It's fucking phenomenal, and it's pissed off, and I remember a great time in my life where that album was brand new and I was just rocking the shit out of it. So that album, fantastic, love it. Um, and you guys did a new album, which you engineered at your studio, Mystic Valley. And what was kind of your trajectory into getting involved in the actual recording process? Was it a kind of out of necessity, like you wanted to record some of your bands, and then you were just like, well, I'd rather do this to myself than have to keep consistently going back to a studio. How did that whole evolution come about?
It was a very slow evolution, and definitely happened like pretty late in my life, because I was a pretty busy drummer for a long time, and I, it started organically. I was in my early 30s, and I bought my first like 4-track cassette recorder, and like I mean, digital was already a thing. I could have like recorded on a laptop or something, I think, but like just the classic 4-track seemed fun to me, and I started dabbling with like instrumentation. Like I played like the bass a little bit and guitar, and just figured out how to play power chords and messed around a little bit just for my own amusement. And then it's like a few months after that, I was like, oh, they made like 8-track cassette ones. So I got like the bigger like Tascam 8-track Porta Studio. And I was like, cool, now I've got 4 more tracks. And then recorded just like demos of just like dumb songs that I made that I never intended to do anything with. After that, I was like, oh, you can get like a reel to reel tape machine for not that much money. And then I got a real tape machine, a little one, and a mixing board. Um, and it's funny, the mixing board and tape machine I got was like a Fostex B16 and a Ramza mixing board. Um, I think visually gravitated towards them or whatever. And I think I learned why later in life, because Kingpin recorded our last stuff on that same format with Bill T. Miller at Headroom Studios. And that for a long time was like the pinnacle of my drum sound for me, made on this pretty humble gear, but by somebody pretty brilliant, I guess. And anyways, I just must have like subconsciously remembered what that gear looked like. And when I went to buy some gear, that's what I chose. Because when I was a drummer recording in studios. But anyways, I did that, and then I ended up buying like this giant reel-to-reel Ampex MM1000 tape machine, which had a cool legacy. It was from the local WGBH station here in Boston, and then Kurt Ballou of God City bought it from GBH, had it for a bit. He ended up selling it to, quote, some guy that seemed like he didn't know how to use it, which is the person I bought it from. Because once I got it, it just came up in conversation, and he's like, "Oh, I used to have one of those. Yeah, I got it from WGBH. Yeah." And then he's like, "Wait, did you get it from like some guy out in Western Mass?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did. It was in a barn, and everything was covered in dust, and he had all this like stuff there, and it looked like it had been sitting there for 10 years." And he's like, "That's my old tape machine." And I think, I don't know, maybe some early Hope Con and maybe American Nightmare had been recorded on that machine. And I've long since sold that, but that really kind of got me interested in tape recording, just because I thought it was such a cool format. And I like machines and um, fixing things. And then when we were looking at a home to buy, we were really looking at a place where I could build a studio, which is what this place is here. Um,
Yeah.
and and so um,
Oh no.
more and more gear, but the motivation really was still just like the fascination with the format, and with trying to record like friends and stuff. And then I was like, oh, I can make some demos of my own bands if I need to, which I did. Like the early Blood Horse recordings were actually my first recordings, and they were like released in the world. They suck, but that was my sort of like first time really recording anything that was put out in the world. And so, fast forward to American Nightmare getting back together and wanting to make recordings, it just made sense to record here with me. I think our kind of vibe and our aesthetic is very like DIY. Like we're probably more punk than a lot of people realize. With like almost like we would rather have full control over something and maybe have it not be as good, than have like a professional do it and have it be quote unquote better, whatever that. And usually it's not the way other bands operate, but it's how we operate. And I mean, definitely there are people that respond to that as fans, but it's just that's how we like to do things. And so for me to make our record, it's like I was always going to make our record. We never even talked about anybody else. Just doing everything kind of in house and by ourselves is
Like the advantages to analog versus digital are, and do you feel like there's things that digital does better, and I guess why you kind of operate in an analog studio, much like Steve Albini, rest in peace, which I think his recordings are amazing, but what kind of propelled you down the path of analog?
I mean, really, the the of it is that I just think it's a cooler format. It's a cooler way to record. Um, like making records on tape. I think the process is it's just like a cooler way to do it. Um, Digital is great. There's a lot of editing, but like it's like I almost don't know where to begin. I'm not even like an analog purist kind of person. It's just what I prefer and the way I like to work.
Mhm.
But all the editing that gets done with music, especially heavy music, um, turns that heavy music into that kind of music that I don't really like. You know, it's like every like drum sound is like a sampled sound. Um, there's even like a lot of guitar sounds with digital technology. They're all kind of like amp modeling and things like that, and so it's like really easy to like take a band that like has a sound and you like homogenize it and it just sounds like everything else. And then every like snare drum hit, it's exactly the same. And it's all lined up to a grid when you edit it that way. Um, and to me, it takes like a very exciting style of music and makes it kind of unexciting and boring. And it takes all the things that I like about heavy music and just kind of takes it away. And for me, I've always preferred like real performances, and I don't want to edit stuff. Like my editing for me is like I'll do a punch in, or like if you're singing something and you miss a line or something, or you're a little pitchy, like I'll just punch you in, and it'll be you singing that part, not something that I made with a computer. It might have taken you 30 tries to get there, but it's still you singing it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and so like there is a lot of flexibility with tape editing and punching in, punching out, even doing like tape edits, razor edits, putting two or more performances together. um, but with that kind of editing, something I'm not interested in anyways, um, working with tape is like really my preferred way, because like I don't know, there's the argument that analog sounds better than digital. I mean, digital sounds pretty good now. um, so it's like it's sort of less about that. I still do prefer analog to digital sound wise, but like that's a very small part of it. The whole like process of working with tape is really what turns me on, and that's why I still record analog. And On top of that, like there's like 100,000 digital studios and like ways to record yourself digitally. If I'm running a recording studio that people are going to pay money, I got to offer something like unique and different. And so staying with tape kind of works for me in that way as well. Um, but it's just like a more like real way to present recorded music. And it's just what I prefer. I've actually kind of looked a lot at like Steve Albini interviews and stuff lately. Given that he passed away recently,
Yeah.
and a lot of what he said in his interviews, like I totally align with that. And you know, I have felt kind of isolated where it's just me. And like, am I fucking crazy? Like, I'm still recording with tape, you know? And it just felt good to just have someone that also was passionate about tape recording and analog recording. Um,
Yeah, and to speak on Steve Albini, like, he did I mean the Butch Vig did the first Nirvana recording, and then Steve Albini did In Utero. I mean, I prefer the sound of In Utero to Nevermind. I think it just sounds like a way like warmer record and just way kind of more organic, like you're actually listening to Nirvana perform it live.
Exactly. Like you're listening to performances when you're listening to stuff recorded on tape. Once you start editing things, especially drums, like it's no longer that person playing because you're moving stuff around and moving it to a grid. And it's the drum machine, it's like programmed in a modern way by a drummer kind of playing how the drum parts go. But then once you're editing it all, it's a drum machine. And, with tape, it's very different because like even if the edits are still the person playing it. And so you get sort of like a human element that's kind of gone in many modern recordings. And sometimes I ask myself, like, the listener at this point, like a young listener, almost expects it to sound super edited in like that digital style of recording. And I'm like, am I just making these like archaic sounding recordings? And like ultimately, I think the answer is no. But it's still like something that I think about sometimes, and like modern listener expectations. But then, I think even with that, it makes what I do something a little bit special or unique. Um, but I don't know. Like I say, it's just what I like. It's like
Sure.
how I like to do it.
I hear you. And another question was, what was your participation in the 108 records on Death Wish? Are they true freaks? And I understand that you actually engineered 1861, which I think is an awesome record. But did you have any, or no? Were you a drum tech on that? I want to make sure I got that correct. Still there?
Okay, on that 108 record, yeah, still here, still here. You were breaking up
Okay.
a bit, but yeah, on that record, it's funny. The bass player Trivacrom, he's an old friend of mine from when I played in Shelter. Um,
Hmm.
it was when I first started recording in this house. So I just built Mystic Valley Studio, and I was still wasn't that good at recording yet. I mean, it was good enough, but he asked me if I would do a 108 record, and I was like, well, you should come check out the studio first. You might want to record some, like, we we won't record with you. We don't care. We know you got this. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like Vic's flying in from Japan. Like, I was a little nervous about it, but he assured me that the guys were like totally into it. And, I kind of just let it happen. I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And I think they all stayed at the house here. And, they're all kind of old friends. So it was like nice just having them around and just making this record. But like, I'm also kind of like secretly shitting my pants because I'm like, I hope I don't fuck this up, And it was a very fun record to make. It felt a little out of my league at the time, but it's what the band wanted. And I mean, they were like, they're just punk. They're like, you're our friend. We'll just record with you, Like that was like as much thought that they gave it. Like they didn't care. But a band like that can do that because they're going to show up and just like shred. Like it's still going to sound like them no matter where they record,
Yeah.
But then I ran into a little debacle with the uh, the vocals where like the microphone, one of the wires broke a little bit, and so it had like kind of a thinner sound. But the way Rob sings is very, he just like slams a couple of pain relievers and just starts singing, and the pace is very quick because he knows he's going to get a fucking crazy headache from the singing. And it'll like, he has a small window where he'll be able to sing before his like headache is too bad. So we're trying to just get through it. And rather than stop and like fix a microphone, which I was like almost not even noticing it was broken because like we were getting takes so intensely. Then when we went to go mix it, I was like, oh shit, that sounds really thin. Like I think I can EQ it and I was like maxing out EQs to make it sound normal, and it did sound normal. And then I'm like, oh, okay, now I got to make mixes. None of the band lives here except for the bass player and the drummer. And so the mixes ended up a little bass and drum heavy for sure. The guitar was not as loud as it should have been. And as we were mixing, I don't know if we did the whole thing or a few songs. The guys at Death Wish heard it and they're like, hey, can you do one with like the guitars louder? And I was like, yeah, no problem. And like, as I was like going to do it, I got another message saying like, hey, can you send the reels over to Kurt? And I was like, oh man, for privilege of mixing it. But yeah, then Kurt mixed it. Sounds great. But I did get a phone call
Yeah.
from him saying, hey, did something go wrong with the tape transfer? Because he mixed digitally. He sent the transfer to digital. He's like, did something go wrong with the transfer with the vocals? Or was there something fucked up with it? And I had to tell him like, oh, the fucking mic broke, and I just kept it rolling. But that was like my first like recording session that was like not my own band. That was like a band that kind of I was ready for it, but I went for it anyways. And I don't know. That's that 108 record. It's a good record.
It's very
Not because of me,
raw,
but
and
good band.
it's very raw. Like, and you know, I understand that Kurt did the a new beat from a Dead Heart, and I mean both those albums have like a lot of like, you know, punch. You know, like you go back and you listen to 108's older recordings. To me, like they sounded good, but like also a little bit
Right.
thin. You know, and I think like Kurt really just, you know, kind of made it so like just like that first album, and then, you know, leading on into 1861, like the sound of 108 just became so much that it was, you know, I don't want to say like a different band, but kind of a different evolution in sound for them.
I mean, another step forward for them, I guess,
Yeah.
or a step somewhere.
Like sonically they sounded like way different than their older material.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think they had some time off between records, and you're always going to grow during that time,
Sure.
become a new band.
Another question here was, how did it feel to have one of your recordings honored at the Grammys? And I wasn't actually familiar with this.
Um, that was a High on Fire record that I drum teched for, so I just tuned the drums for it.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and yeah. Still very cool though. And Kurt
Yeah,
did that
definitely.
record. There was a time where I drum teched for him quite a bit, and great band, great dudes. You know, so like very cool to be a tiny part of making that record.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Another question. You know, what is on
Yeah,
the
awards
horizon?
like that are kind of bullshit, anyways. Because how many
Go-
records that are equally great or better that didn't win anything? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Another question we got here as, you know, what's on the horizon for American Nightmare? Live dates coming soon. How many years has the band been together now? Well, do the math. We don't need to worry about that one. I guess basically, the question is, what's on the horizon? Another question, you know, what are your favorite recorded songs, and what do you like to play live as far as AN material is concerned?
Um, Honestly, and I think maybe for all of us in the band, like we love the stuff is what we like playing live. It's almost like not that we're a new band, but like I don't know, we all are different people now. We all are different songwriters. Um, our lives are all different. with their most recent stuff. But we don't play a lot from We're Down. Um, I think and I start missing that album and those songs. But like all the classics, like we've played those songs a lot in our lives, you know what I mean? And so I feel like the our like pleasure from playing that or whatever, or satisfaction comes from like crowd reaction. Um, now I can only speak for myself. We don't really like talk about any of this stuff. But I don't know. I guess we're more into the new stuff and moving forward. Like, just we're not trying to rehash anything that we used to do. It's like that had a place and a time, and you know, not that we're doing anything crazy different from before, but it's just more where our heads are at now, I guess. And I mean, aside from like the Ramones or something, like probably any band's going to answer that pretty similarly, I would say.
Sure. I can't imagine how many times like Mick Jagger is, probably like, "Oh yeah, Brown Sugar, here we go. I'm so stoked on this one." Like it's been playing it for years and years. And of course, you definitely want to kind of like, you get amped on your new material. And I love Life Support. That song is so awesome. Like it almost has like a late '70s, '80s, early '80s like punk vibe to it, and I thought it was just a really like natural evolution for you guys as far as sound wise. I love it. I think it's great.
Like, we don't want to make the same record again. We're not the same people as we were before. Like, so why would we? You know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but like, I don't know. You never know what the future is going to hold. We don't know like how active we're going to be, how unactive we might be. I consider it something that's probably always going to be there throughout my life, um, in some way or another, you know. But then, how long can I keep playing hardcore punk music? Like physically, how, how much longer can I play it?
Right.
Uh, I'd like to think a long time, but I don't ever want to do it where something embarrassing is going on stage. You know what I mean? I don't want to ever like
Right.
suck on the same page with all that stuff. But
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, we don't sit around talking about it, so that's just my
Yeah.
perspective.
I hear you. And now, one of the questions, because I come from like an arts and entertainment background, I always ask people like as far as culturally or outside of music, like what influences you, like whether it be films, whether it be literature, just other. Do you have any other creative pursuits outside of playing and recording music?
I mean, I kind of don't. Um, I don't watch TV. I don't go to movies. Um, I don't even read that much. Um, I am very busy with creating my own things. But to me is it's maybe more broad than what some people think of it as. Because for me, um, it can be music, it can be art, but it's also like building a chair or I don't know, refurbishing a boat or something. Like my life is like busy with these kind of things. And I
Sure.
like to stay active. I bike a lot. I canoe. I just bought a tiny sailboat, and I
Oh,
just started
cool.
getting into that. Yeah, and I love learning new things. Sailing is one of those. Um, but then electronics from the studio and like buying old gear and refurbishing it. coming up with sort of new products. Like I came out with my own kind of drum microphone. I machined enough pieces to build a small run of like 200. And I kind of look at that as like something I could create in the way that some people make like a limited edition, like guitar pedal or something. But I'm not a guitarist, I'm a drummer and I'm a recording engineer. So I made a microphone. It's the mic that I
Right.
wanted. But creating that from the ground up was cool. I created like a whole bunch of mods for my recording console. I worked for a few months making just like a mute group for it, and so my creativity kind of comes out, or that part of me is satisfied in ways that aren't music in a lot of ways, and I consider it to be just as sort of like artsy as creating music. It's like there's like something that doesn't exist and then you make it and it does now exist. Like that's like so rewarding to me. And traditionally that's been music and songs for me, and now like other people's songs. But you know, it could be like something that I just build. I like to build stuff and make things.
Yeah. Well, and
I don't know if that
like
really answers your question, but I mean, it's not like I go ahead, go
You
ahead.
what you're saying is like more creation, less consumption, and I'm kind of getting into the same boat myself. And what you were kind of saying about the when you realize that you've created something, you'd mentioned you'd come from a farming background. Myself, I actually used to, when I stayed at one of the temples, I would farm, and I made some eggplants and some okra. Like I put the seeds in the soil and then I watered it, and then everything grew, and it like tomatoes, and it was beautiful, and then like eating the okra, like frying it in coconut oil and then just eating it and be like, I helped to grow this, like it's like you said, it's such a gratifying feeling to like, yeah, I made this, that's cool.
Yeah, growing things is like another really cool thing, you know? It's like, I mean, you're not even really truly creating it. It just kind of happens, but
Right, exactly.
still it's like it's something that didn't exist before, and it only exists because you put a seed in some dirt and it rained on
Yeah.
it, you know? But
Yeah, no, I
you
like
know,
to feel a little bit
it's
better the fact that yeah.
I mean, yeah, it wouldn't have happened without you. Not to take any credit away from it.
No, no, no,
Growing
nature did all the work.
plants is hard. Yeah. But yeah, it's
You
not
know
to say that I'm not living in like a bubble where I'm not influenced by other like you know, pieces of music or art. But musically, at least, I tend to um, search for more things from the past, like kind of undiscovered gems for me. I do a lot more of that rather than finding like the cool new hot bands. I'm excited when I do find those. But I almost would rather be influenced something that's not current. Um, so, I mean, not that I do it intentionally that way, but I feel like the side effect of it is like a cooler or more interesting influence. So I feel like when bands are influenced by the same things they're trying to create, it is the end result is not as interesting, really.
Um, anyone you wanna, like, shout out or, any, like, upcoming bands that you feel like are of note?
I mean, kind of going back to what I just said, I listen to a lot of older weird shit. But up and coming bands, there's stuff that's been in the studio. It's been Komodo Rojo. They're a two-piece band. Um, they're great. And another one, definitely not up and coming, but Wunderbar. Um, they're one of my favorites. Listen to them a bunch. Uh, Working on an album from this band called The Specific Heats. They're kind of like a surf rock band. Um, I mean, it's all across the board over here. It's like I'm not going to be able to tell you what the hot new hardcore band is, really. You know,
Right.
um, unless I mean, there is a trend of bands opening for American Nightmare and becoming popular. Not because of that, but like we're just like one little step on their journey of their upward progression. Like I've been Gel, they're like huge right now,
Mm.
and they're great. But I discovered them just from being on tour with us, and then just kept watching them play, fucking constantly, and more shows, bigger and bigger shows, and they're like huge now, like stuff like that. Um, it's more of an organic way to find out about bands for me, where I'm like actually interacting with them in some way. Um, there's just weird like kind of pop music stuff that I stumble into. Some of it's kind of good. I used to hate pop music. A lot of it sucked, but now it's like they play styles of music that I kind of like. Like I like Harry Styles, shit like that. There's this guy Johnny. It's like Jawny. His songs are great. Um, but this is like pop kind of stuff. I don't know if our viewers here are going to be into that, but that's what I like.
Like a little bit of everything around here, you know?
Yeah.
Well, dude, I want to thank you so much for, coming on the show and, bearing with all the technical difficulties that we've had. And, I want to also thank, anybody who showed up and that was involved in the chat, for bearing with our technical malfunctions here. I think that's great. You know,
Another reason to hate digital.
well, I just actually relocated to a different room, so I don't know if my internet was part of the culprit here, but I may have to see if I can invest in a higher bandwidth or move some things around so that the signal may be a little bit better. But who knows? We'll see. But yeah, like I mentioned before, got a merch company, hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Just go there. There's some shirts there. Use 20 for 20% off. It'd be awesome. That would be greatly appreciated. And, please support Alex with all his creative endeavors. I mean, if you're in the area, look into Mystic Valley Recording, analog. I'd love that about that. The next, recording that I'd like to do, I've always thought about doing analog. Coming from the film world, there's just something about like the organicness of shooting on film, like there's, it just seems warmer. It just seems more real and, kind of less polished, So, um, one of these days I'd like to do that, but yeah, check out, Mystic Valley and, all the aforementioned projects that Alex is part of, American Nightmare, Blood Horse. I'll put all the, links to the groups here in the comments section. And like I said, like and subscribe. Click on that bell for notifications. I really appreciate you. Alex Garcia-Rivera, it's been a pleasure, my man. I appreciate you so much. And
Likewise.
would love to see you back on the show. And yeah, if just hang out for a minute and we'll just chop it up for a little bit. And I want to thank everybody for being here. Namaste, everybody. Job bless. Be good. Thank you.